Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Security for Elasticsearch. We will be getting started here in just a few moments. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. Today we will be sharing some updates from SearchGuard and floragunn. You'll be muted for the duration of the webinar, but please submit all of your questions via the Q&A section and we'll save some time at the end of the webinar to answer them. We have three speakers today: David Bennett, CEO of Excelerate Systems, Jochen Cresson, CEO of floragunn, and Mark Escamilla, Solutions Architect at Accelerate Systems. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, David.
Thanks, Melody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to those of you around the world. Thanks for joining us on this webinar. We appreciate you taking the time to hear what we've got to say. So we're going to go through a few items today. What we've got is a introduction to SearchGuard. Then we're going to have a demonstration of SearchGuard from Mark Escamilla. And then Jochen Cresson from floragunn is going to go over some new developments in SearchGuard 7, some interesting additions to the product feature set, as well as talk about the future for SearchGuard. I'll then come back and talk about SearchGuard licensing. And then we'll conclude and answer any questions or any comments you might have. We're probably going to have questions and answers at the end, as Melody said, but during the course of the presentations, you can obviously ask questions in the Q&A on the tab that you see in front of you. We're also going to have 3 polls about what your plans are for Elasticsearch, some questions about SearchGuard, as well as compliance issues. So with that, let's get started. So in terms of floragunn are the developers and makers of SearchGuard, and SearchGuard has actually been out in the market since 2013. It was, in fact, the very first security plugin for Elasticsearch in the world. And what it basically provides is this enterprise security suite for Elasticsearch, and floragunn are based in Germany. Accelerate Systems is the partner for floragunn with SearchGuard in various countries, primarily North America, Latin America, as well as the UK and France. As an organization, we have about 300 customers in 28 countries. We've been going about 11 years. We have 7 offices around the world, and we focus on 4 areas, which is big data, security, both of which are relevant to Elasticsearch and SearchGuard, obviously, the cloud and IT operations. And effectively what we do is we build those core systems for our customers. So let's talk about SearchGuard. Some of you on this session, you're already SearchGuard customers, so some of this will be familiar to you. But the The others might be sort of quite new. So we're going to go through some basics as well as talk about the overall structure of the product offering. So the thing about SearchGuard is it's a plugin to Elasticsearch. So it's dependent on you using Elasticsearch. It doesn't function in any other platform environment. And so if you're familiar with Elasticsearch, then you'll know what things like SearchGuard and other third-party plugins can do. So if you think about what SearchGuard does, it's this very broad and very deep security suite that covers most of the requirements for securing your Elasticsearch cluster. And those of you who are familiar with Elasticsearch will know that out of the box, even now, with the recent announcements from Elasticsearch, it doesn't really have security. It has very base security, but what SearchGuard does is build on that and be able to fully secure your environment, whether it's at the cluster or the index level, and the more granular requirements for authentication and authorization. So when you think about SearchGuard, it's really providing that basic encryption at the internode level, as well as at the REST layer. And it has role-based access, so things like LDAP and Active Directory. And we've got various authentication and authorization methods. And then when you want to get even more granular, it goes down to document and field level security, audit logging, and so on. And then more recently, with SearchGuard, what we've done is put out a compliance edition. And if GDPR out of the European Union or PCI-DSS on a global basis or HIPAA in the US are important to you, then SearchGuard can also help you achieve compliance in those areas. The way the product is structured, it's sort of like building blocks. So you have the community edition, which is the free, as in free, version that you can use for any purpose you like. It's Apache 2.0 license. And this is intended to provide that index and cluster level security. And then you have the commercial versions, which is the enterprise edition you see in the middle. And that gives you that more granular level of security that I just talked about. And then there's the compliance edition, which focuses on achieving compliance in those regulatory environments I mentioned. And that'll do things like document read and write history, audit log event routing, and integration with the SIM tools that you might have already deployed. And so when you look at the compliance edition, you get all the things that are in the enterprise edition and all the things that are in the community edition, hence that, building block concept I just mentioned. This is the feature list for SearchGuard 6. We've recently released SearchGuard 7, obviously in response to Elasticsearch 7, and Jochen is going to go over what those additional features are in SearchGuard 7. We're not going to go through a complex architecture discussion, but this gives you some idea. You have your Elasticsearch cluster, and then what you have is a whole set of features and capabilities, either at the REST level or at the transport level, as well as things like certificates and key stores. And really the whole idea is to make your cluster as secure as possible. One of the things that we've, or floragunn have done a lot of work on in the last couple of years is really about single sign-on. And so you've got a whole range of possibilities for single sign-on, including JSON Web Tokens, SAML, Kerberos, Spinego, and some other aspects there. But this gives you an idea of how the product is structured on top of Elasticsearch. The other thing that's important to understand is that SearchGuard, when it's deployed as a plugin, has its own index. And so there's a reason behind that, which is it'll allow you to do that reloadable configuration while the cluster is running. And so you don't have to take down the cluster, apply your changes, and then restart it. You can actually do it while the cluster is running and the service is not interrupted. But it's important to understand SearchGuard has its own index, and then there's an administration capability that you see in this thing called SGAdmin. Now, one of the things that is very important to understand, and Elastic, the company, actually only just caught up with this recently, is you've got to have internode encryption with your Elasticsearch cluster. If you do not have internode encryption, anybody can just add another node, get access to all your data. And so it wasn't that long ago that you could deploy Elasticsearch without TLS at the transport layer. But now, thankfully, everyone has agreed that that's important, but SearchGuard has been doing that from the very beginning. The other thing about SearchGuard is it does support OpenSSL, and not everyone, but most people would agree that that does give you access to modern cyber suites as well as better performance. Then let's move to some of the commercial versions. So with SearchGuard Enterprise, that middle one in the chart that I showed earlier, you get these pluggable authentication and authorization modules. We're not going to go through all these, but it's basically to make sure your authentication and authorization is running correctly. We already mentioned the single sign-on options. And then you've got these role-based access controls that give you that really fine-grained cluster index level permissions. The other thing that you get with SearchGuard Enterprise is document and field level security. So if you want a particular user or a particular role or a particular group to see some part of the index, so specific documents, and not see others, SearchGuard will do that for you, and even down to individual fields if that's important, as it sometimes is, particularly, for example, in healthcare records where you want the clinician to see everything, but you want the administrators to not see everything in the same document. And then you've got the capability for actually logging what's going on in your cluster through audit logging. And so at this point, most customers are using SearchGuard Enterprise because of these aspects. But then what we realized maybe 18 months to a year, 2 years ago, was there's actually quite a lot of requirements in Elasticsearch deployments for compliance. And so about a year ago, SearchGuard Compliance Edition was released. It has all the features of SearchGuard Enterprise, but what it also provides is the ability to work towards compliance with GDPR and PCI-DSS and HIPAA in particular. Now, as we all know, a software product doesn't make you compliant. There's a whole set of other business processes and let's say, technology-based processes that you have to implement. So what SearchGuard Compliance Edition is meant to do is help you towards that goal of being compliant to GDPR in your Elasticsearch cluster deployments. And so we're not saying it does it and ticks the box, but it does help you to get to that point. So when we think about the structure of the product and then about the sort of different editions, hopefully this chart will help you sort of get the concept. So you have Elasticsearch at the bottom here, and then all these boxes that are in light gray, these are the free parts. So SearchGuard Community Edition, Transport Layer, TLS, and so on. Those are all the free Community Edition components. Then when you get over here to the darker gray ones, these are the elements where there's a commercial edition, which therefore means you have to purchase a subscription. And so the whole sort of basis is with the Community Edition, you can secure your index in your cluster. If you want anything more granular than that, you've really got to go for the commercial versions, Enterprise Edition or Compliance Edition. So we've got quite a few customers. It's been widely adopted in the Fortune 100, the Fortune 500, even the Russell 2000 to a certain extent. We've also got quite a lot of adoption in government. And as you'd expect, because Elasticsearch is widely adopted in SaaS type business models, we have a lot of online and technology and cybersecurity organizations that are using Elasticsearch and want to deploy it. Want to deploy SearchGuard as part of that. Now, because it's security, almost every customer does not want their name revealed, and we respect that. So what I can tell you is it's banks, retailers, insurance companies, telcos, government, healthcare. We've got quite a lot of users in education as well, gaming and so on. And I'm sure for those of you who are not customers yet, if you do become customers, then you'll have the same sort of attitude that you don't want us to reveal your use of SearchGuard, and we will always respect that. We also have quite a few organizations that are using SearchGuard in their own deployments, and we don't have time to go through all of them here, but just to pick one or two. Siren is the developer of Kibi, if any of you are familiar with that, a sort of fork of Kibana. And they use SearchGuard in their deployments to secure their Elasticsearch clusters. And then IBM are using the community version in various aspects of their offerings. SimMonster is also another one that uses SearchGuard because their SIM tool is based on Elasticsearch, and so they use SearchGuard to secure that Elasticsearch cluster. So some good technology partners, some great customers, if only we could tell you their names. So that's sort of a brief overview on SearchGuard and the sort of makeup of the product. What I'm going to do now is hand over to Mark Escamilla, and Mark's going to take you through a demonstration of SearchGuard. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you, David. Okay, so I think you're seeing my screen now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so basically we're gonna go through some of the features that David had mentioned. Some of them are gonna be related to multi-tenancy, others to compliance. It's gonna be a mixture of you know, pretty much everything. But we're gonna keep it short because later we have some more other demos, another demo for the new features that are coming up within the SearchGuard family. So for now, I'm going to show you, you know, this is an environment where we are simulating some information within a company. It's mostly human resources information. Therefore, there are some parts of those records that should be kept, you know, like out of the sight of some of the employees. So in my case here, I'm integrating with Active Directory. So I have a few users defined in Active Directory, and each one of those is assigned to different group within Active Directory. So we're going to be using those groups to manage the authorization of those users within the context of the cluster, of the Elasticsearch cluster. So I'm going to log in with one of the full-time employees. And this is a human resources employee, therefore he has access to everything within the cluster. So if we go there, we can see that this guy has access to, in this case, one of the dashboards that has been defined, where you can see the average salary for each of the positions within the company. And if we explore the information within the human resources environment, we see that you know, this guy or anyone else, you know, belonging to the same group has access to pretty much everything within that index. Then if we switch, you know, we are making use of multi-tenancy here. So let me show you that here, for example, we have the human resources employee is already has been directed to the human resources tenant. Therefore, all the information that he's seeing is only the relevant information for the human resources department. If we switch to another user, let's say that we have, this was a full-time employee and has access to everything. But if we switch to another one, let's say that we switch to a trainee. The trainee will have access to the same tenant, but the information will be a little different. Let me show you. So I'll go there, I'll select the human resources tenant, which is the same as the other one. But now when we switch to the dashboards, we're going to be seeing a different set of information. In particular, if you notice, you know, we are only seeing a subset of the information. We are not seeing the information for the CEOs. And let me show you here in another tab here. Oops, sorry for that. Let me show you here. You know, we have defined our groups, roles, etc. So within the role of the trainee, we are blocking access to some parts of the information. For example, we are giving some restricted access to the fields. So as you can see, it's a subset of the fields within each record. We are also restricting the access to any documents that are related to CEOs. So that's why when we switch back to the dashboard here, you know, we are not seeing the information for the CEO that was present for the full-time employee. So the full-time employee and the trainees are seeing different, you know, it's the same dashboard, but the information that they are seeing is a bit different because they have different levels of access to that underlying information. Okay, so if now I switch completely to a different group, let's say that I log in as a finance employee. I will not have access to the same tenant. That's the configuration that we have here. So as you can see, we don't have access to the human resources tenant. And therefore, if we go and try to look for our dashboard or anything else that has been defined for the human resources department, that's not going to be present for this particular user, because our definition is segregating that information at that level. Not only at the information, the underlying information within the index, but also at the visualization and the dashboard layer. We are also restricting what the user can see, and this is, of course, something that we are able to do because we have the multi-tenancy capabilities within SearchGuard. Let me switch real quick back to the full-time employee and show you one last thing. The employee, as you might remember, was able to see everything from the human resources index. So therefore, within our dashboard, we are seeing the information for the CEOs, but let's now take the information for the architects. I have just copied the architect label there, and I'm going to go and modify my user at the Active Directory level. Hold a sec. So I'm going to add, we are using custom attributes within Active Directory, and I'm going to filter the information for the architect at this level. So this is to show you that we can consume custom levels or custom attributes from Active Directory and make use of them in SearchGuard to define more granular, more granular rules. Apply. Okay. So if I go back here, let me actually go switch this user off, and I'll go, and as an admin, I have the option to purge the cache that SearchGuard has of the authenticated users. So I'll do that right away. And if I go back to the same employee, full-time employee, full-time employee, and use the same dashboard. We are going to see that now we are not seeing the information for the architects as we have added that to the custom attribute in Active Directory, and now we are making use of one additional feature here in SearchGuard, where we are giving access to the same human resources index, but in a, we are filtering any information that belongs to whatever it, the value is coming from the LDAP attribute. So, that's a very powerful feature, because we can then do very, very dynamic definitions within SearchGuard about what information or what data is going to be available to each of those groups within Active Directory. And finally, let me just show you a couple of the features about the compliance. Let me just go back here. And this user, the full-time employee user, is going to access the human resources. Well, it's been accessing the human resources index. And therefore, if we take a look at our compliance indices, we can see that this user, well, in this case, this is for the admin, but let me just reset everything here. Let's do another search with the user. This is just to simplify things, but in general, what I'm trying to show you here is that, for every access that this user, the human resources employee, the full-time employee, is doing to the human resources index, and therefore it's getting access to some sensitive information about the internal employees of this organization. Every time we are keeping a record of what he has been able to read. In particular, for this demo, we are considering that the address is one of our sensitive fields in particular, and therefore, we are seeing that this user the human resources full-time employee has been able to see the address of several of the employees within this organization. So therefore, we kept a record in the audit log of SearchGuard. Also, if for any reason this user wants to add a new user, let's try to add myself as a new user via this full-time employee. Let's say that we are adding. Okay, so the information was added, but as you can see, we are also keeping a track of this type of activities, and therefore we are keeping a record that, again, the full-time employee was able to create a new record with this particular data as part of the load for that particular document. The same goes, if the user deletes the record, the record has been deleted here by the user, and we have the create before, and here we have the delete action. So this is pretty much just to show you that, we, as part of the compliance edition, we have the capabilities of tracking all these type of activities by each of the users, and therefore, these audit log indices will be used later for, by auditors, etc. In order to keep track of what's going on with the index in general, or with the cluster in general. I think for now, that covers pretty much, the presentation or the demo that I had here. Of course, later on, if you have any questions or if you want to go into more detail into any of those features, just let us know. Okay, thank you, and I'm switching back to you, David.
Thanks, Mark. So what we're going to do now, just quickly, is we're going to do a poll. So the question really, which you'll see come up on your screen in a few minutes here, is about Elasticsearch 7 deployment. Now, just a second here. Actually, we'll do the poll in at the end of Jochen's part, I think. So, Jochen, I think I'm going to hand over to you and to talk about SearchGuard 7, and then we'll come back and do the poll in a minute.
All right. Thank you very much, David. Yeah, welcome. My name is Jochen Christin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SearchGuard. So today I'm going to talk about the SearchGuard 7 roadmap, and I will also use the time to demo one of our new features, which is called signals. So let me share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So first of all, what's the status of SearchGuard? Well, we have released SearchGuard 7 in April, just 5 days after Elasticsearch was GA, which kind of proves our very good release cadence. So we're always very fast with releasing new SearchGuard versions whenever a Elasticsearch and Kibana version come out. So currently we're at version 7.1.1. And for those of you that already have tried out Elastic 7, you probably have noticed that there are not a ton of new, or say really new features in it. So we actually took the time to do a lot of cleanup and refactoring under the hood, which mainly is based on the new configuration syntax. So this makes it even simpler to configure roles and tenants and permissions and stuff like that. And we've also added now built-in users, roles, and permissions, which kind of cover like 80% of all the use cases out there. But regarding new features, what we have, what we have in the pipeline, and a lot of these features will come out already in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So the first feature is Kibana role-based access control. So Mark already demoed the really fine-grained level of security and access control that we provide for Elasticsearch. As a new feature, we will also have Kibana role-based access control. talk about that in a minute. We have a new configuration user interface. We added a couple of new security related features, for example, login rate limiting to prevent brute force attacks. We're working on FIPS 142 compliance. We made Kubernetes first-class citizen in SearchGuard. So we have Helm charts for deploying SearchGuard on Kubernetes for quite a while. At the moment, we are also working on the Kubernetes operator. And the last and maybe biggest feature that is in the pipeline is called Signals, which can provide you with insights for Elasticsearch, which is based on data transformation and alerting. So let's first talk about Kibana role-based access control. As an Elasticsearch plugin, of course, SearchGuard is able to control access to indices, documents, and fields. And as Mark already demoed, is even able to anonymize fields, use information from LDAP, for example. So this is all very powerful features. The one thing that was kind of missing and was requested a lot by our customers was Kibana role-based access control. So in Kibana, you have different types of applications like dashboards and visualizations, like management sections and so on. And at the moment, if you have permission to use Kibana, then you're actually able to use all these applications. Now, customers want to be able to control access to these applications also on a more fine-grained level. You don't want to grant access to a regular user for the management application, for example, where you can really have access to system information of Elasticsearch. So with a role-based access control, you can define per role, as with a regular SearchGuard role, which of these applications are actually visible and usable for users. And with all the other features, of course, this works perfectly with Kibana Multitenancy and all the other SearchGuard features that we already have. We have worked on a new configuration user interface. So what you have seen in the demo of Mark was the current one. We put a lot of effort into reworking the look and feel of the UI to actually match the Kibana experience as close as possible. So if you're working with Kibana a lot, you're probably very familiar with this look and feel, and you will be able to use the UI pretty much immediately. And we will also support, of course, all the other Kibana applications like the multi-tenancy to this new UI and look and feel. So the most important aspect or feature that we have is the Signals feature. So Signals for Elasticsearch is a pipelining and alerting application, which basically means that you're able to load data from different sources, which of course includes Elasticsearch, but you can also load data from an HTTP endpoint, a REST API, for example, and we will be adding more of those input or data sources over the course of the time. Then you can transform the data that you've just loaded into the Signals application by using the painless scripting language. This is the scripting language that is supported by Elasticsearch. It's kind of Elasticsearch native. You can then have conditions to control your execution flow, which means you can, for example, abort the execution flow if a specific condition is not met. You can then store your transformed data back to Elasticsearch and other things. And finally, implement alerts and get alerted via email, Slack, PagerDuty, etc. So as with the other features that we have, also this one will be completely compatible with all the other SearchGuard security features. So we can use SearchGuard to control what pipelines and what alerts a user can actually create. So this is just a visual way to describe what Signals is. So on the left-hand side, you have your various input sources, Elasticsearch and REST. We will add support for relational DBs, Kafka, Redis, and so forth. You can set up your execution flow, which can be configured freely. So You can configure multiple data inputs, multiple transformation steps, multiple conditions, and store the data to different endpoints as well. Okay, now I'd like to do a live demo of the Signals application. So this is, like I said, an upcoming feature, so it's not finished yet, but let's have a look at the Signals application. So I'm using Kibana as well, of course, and I'm using a specific user, which is the Signals user that I created, and this user has full access to all the Signals features. So the first item that you see is the actual dashboard, which at the moment is empty because I have not executed any watch or any watch yet. I've created 3 demo watches, and the situation that I want to simulate here is being able to detect brute force attacks to your Elasticsearch cluster. So for that, I'm using the SearchGuard audit logging in the back. The audit logging is a feature that can track activity in your cluster, which includes security-related events like, for example, missing privileges or failed login attempts, which I'm using in my case. So I have configured the audit logging to put all the events, the audit log events, in an index called alerting, and I will base the watches on this index. So let's have a look at a very, very simple watch in the beginning. So this is generally how you define a watch. So first of all, of course, you have to give it a name. That's quite obvious. And as a second step, you would define the schedule in which this watch should be executed. So you have the choice of defining it by interval. You can do it daily, you can do it weekly, you can say every Wednesday and Thursday at 12 a.m., for example. And if you want, you can also make it a little bit more complex by using cron expressions directly. So in my case, in this first part of the demo, I'm using the graph mode, which is the visual mode, to define watches. First of all, I need to define the index where I want to run my watches on. So in this case, I'm running it on the audit log index. And as you can see, since I'm using a user that has restricted access to the cluster and to the indices, here I'm only able to select the indices to which this user has access to. So this kind of demonstrates that this new Signals feature is fully integrated with all the other SearchGuard capabilities. Next, I have to define the timestamp field. And as a last one, I have to define my actual match query. So I could do a count, I could do average, min, max. So you have all the possibilities of the Elasticsearch query capabilities. And what I want to do is I want to count all the audit logs that have been generated in the last, let's say, 3 minutes. And if they're above, let's say, 50, then I'd like to get an alert. And as you can see here in the graph, these are the actual events that are stored in my audit log index. And this orange line down here, this is the actual threshold. So in this case, the Signals application would generate alerts for all these data points that we see here. So we have a live update feature as well. So you can actually see what your query is doing. Now, for my actions, I can, at the moment, I have configured Slack as the only action. Of course, I can have multiple actions as well. As you can see here, we can have webhooks, we can use Slack, we can use Elasticsearch as an endpoint, and these are the types we're currently working on that are coming soon. And now when I execute my query, I can use the result of the query to actually trigger an event or an alert. And in this case, this is a simple text that's posted on Slack, where I just get the message about the total value of the generated events. So in this case, if I'm going back here, so we can have a look how this looks under the hood. So this is the actual way that we store the alerts. definitions. And if we execute it, then you can first of all see on the right-hand side, we get the result. We see that all our actions have been executed and all our actions have been triggered. And if I'm going to go to Slack, so this is a channel that I connected via the webhook, you can see this message down here, unusual amount of audit log events detected, some 230. So this is a very, very simple definition of a watch. Now, if I want to detect brute force attacks, I mean, of course, this is not sufficient, because what I probably want to have is I want to aggregate my audit log events by username, for example. Of course, I want to only have the failed login attempts. And so I'm going to close this one here and open the failed login counts aggregated. So let's look at that in JSON mode again. And what you can see here on the left-hand side is different blocks that I defined in my pipeline that is executed. So the first block is I defined a couple of constants. I could also add another block for pulling in data from a REST API, for example. As a second block, I do a search on my audit log index. This is just a query that filters for all the events that are in the failed login category. And then I have defined a couple of aggregations where I aggregate based on the username, based on the remote address, and then I filter out all of the buckets or aggregations where the failed login count is not more than 5. And then again, in my condition, I'm checking if I have more than if I have one aggregation that that has more than the defined failed login accounts, and only then my action is triggered. In this case, it's again a Slack action. This one is a little bit more complicated. So one thing that I'd like to mention is that you can actually use, in each transformation step, you can use the painless scripting language. So you could also, for example, calculate values based on the Elasticsearch query that's been executed. You're able to transform your data, for example, in order to clean it up before writing it back to another Elasticsearch index. And here in the action section, you can use the Mustache scripting language to format the message that, in this case, is being sent to Slack. So in my case, I have these aggregations, and if we execute it, again, I see the result on the right-hand side, and let's have a look at the message. So what I did here is I detected 404 failed login attempts. I have a nice view of the affected accounts, how many failed login attempts we detected, and the actual IP address this kind of attack is coming from. So when you're working with the JSON mode, of course, we have some helper tools, like the templates section here. So we have examples of let's say the search query syntax, the aggregations. We have examples for bucket aggregations, pipeline aggregations, and you can add it directly to your watch definition by pushing that button. And like I said, you have the full power of A, the painless scripting language, and B, the Mustache templating system to transform and format your data. So in this example, I don't have it in the demo, but in this example, what I also could have done is I could have fetched the geolocation of the IP addresses that I captured, and add this information to my alert as well. So this is a basic demonstration of the feature set. We hope that we're able to release a technical preview within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We will mainly focus on adding to the UI to make editing a little bit more simple and easier. We're adding more inputs and outputs, and in the long run, we will also add streaming capabilities to the Signals application. So that concludes my demo, and I'm going to hand back over to you, David.
Thanks, Jochen. That's very, very interesting. So what we're going to do now is just do a short overview of licensing. There's quite a few sort of differences in the way we license compared to Elasticsearch, and those of you who are customers will know some of this stuff. The fundamental with SearchGuard licensing is it's per cluster, not per node. And we only charge for production clusters. So anything that's development or testing or staging or any other kind of non-production cluster, you can use SearchGuard in any of the editions for as long as you like, free of charge. And so, for example, if you're cybersecurity software a SaaS organization, you can develop your platform using SearchGuard right up to the point where you're offering it to your customers or you're in production. And so that's a philosophy that we've had with SearchGuard from the very beginning. That gives you certainty of cost over the long run. So if you have 10 or 100 or 1,000 nodes, it's the same price. And we don't charge, we don't make you pay prior to the thing going into production. We do have some options for small clusters, typically 5 or less, where we will offer node-based licensing. And that's simply to make the cost of entry a little bit lower for smaller organizations or smaller projects. But once you get beyond 5 nodes, it's an unlimited license for the cluster. There's also a fully featured trial license for SearchGuard, which lasts 60 days. You can go to the SearchGuard website and download that. We don't force customers to take support. A lot of that depends on your own organization's technical skills. If you have very high Elasticsearch skills and very high security skills, we have some customers who say, I don't need support, but more typically, probably 75 to 80% of customers do take support because that allows them to have escalations, raise tickets, request feature enhancements, and so on. The other thing with SearchGuard is that there's full access to the source code, including the commercial versions. And that's been true from the very beginning. So you've seen Elasticsearch do that, I think a bit more than a year ago, where they published the source code of XPack. But SearchGuard's been doing that from the very beginning because we think it's important that customers who are putting their reliance on SearchGuard to secure their clusters can do things like security audits. And so that's been from the very beginning. And then Excelerate Systems also provides operational support for complementary parts of the Elasticsearch ecosystem, such as LStack, Kafka, and FluentD. So when you think about licensing, the download that you get, the trial version, is a completely fully featured version of SearchGuard. It's not restricted in any way. The whole license and enterprise module handling is fully integrated into the product. And what that means is that you've got that operational and legal safety. And as we all know in the open source world, there is some issues you have to be a little bit careful about, but we provide that sort of safety net. As I said, there's a 60-day trial period. The trial license is generated automatically. One thing we always say to potentially new customers or people who are trying SearchGuard for the first time, when you go to the website, you can download a demo version. Please don't try to use that in production. It's a demo version. And if you do want to switch from the demo version to a more, let's say, production-oriented implementation, please contact us and we'll help you and give you advice on how to do that. Most customers do get through their evaluations within 60 days, but if you need an extension, just let us know. And if it's a reasonable request, we'll certainly make that happen. And this is just a graphical idea of the whole cluster versus node model. When you think about XPack, it is a node-based pricing structure. And that's obviously what Elasticsearch want to do. But with SearchGuard, we're very focused on certainty of pricing, certainty of cost, and being able to predict what the total cost of ownership is over 2, 3, 4 years and so on. And so we think, and more importantly, most of our customers think this is a very valuable way of pricing the product. There's obviously a lot of sources out there. You can go to the SearchGuard website and look at products. You can overview the licensing. The documentation is extensive. There's a lot of documentation. We're working on things like cookbooks, which will be coming out soon, which will show you how to do specific things with SearchGuard. And then there's a very, very active community forum. So if you decide to implement the community version, the free version, this is where you would go to get help. And as I say, it is very active. If you're a paying customer, you can obviously go to this forum, or you can use your, if you have support, your capability to ask questions through the support portal. So unfortunately, the polling doesn't seem to be working in Zoom. I'm not sure why, so apologies for that. So we're going to have to skip that part. But we do have, and these are just the legal parts about floragunn and Accelerate Systems. But we do have some questions. So let's switch to that, get through those questions, and then we'll finish in time. So let's take the first one. These are mostly going to be for you, Jochen, I think. So in terms of the Signals, let's start with that. Is Signals integrated with SearchGuard, or is it a plugin to Elasticsearch?
So our plans are to release the Signals code with the SearchGuard plugin for Elasticsearch. Mm-hmm. So that means that the pipelines that I showed before are actually running on your Elasticsearch cluster, but you can decide on which nodes they are running, of course. So as with other applications, you could, for example, add another 1 or 2 nodes which are just there for running the watches, if they are probably heavy or if the queries are complex. So yes, it's integrated with SearchGuard, so it's a plugin for Elasticsearch, but you have full control on which nodes in your cluster the pipelines are executed.
Okay, great. And for the person who asked that question, if you've got a follow-on, just type it into the Q&A. And then the second question about Signals is there a plan to add alerts to Microsoft Teams?
Well, it's not in the backlog yet, but the way that we usually do it is that we will release our initial version, like a tech preview, pretty soon. And we will ask you to download it and try it out. And then we will just collect feedback. So if we have a lot of customers that are interested in having Microsoft Teams support in Signals, then we'll definitely do that.
Okay, great. And then is there going to be an API for Signals?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, so I showed the Signals application purely by using the Kibana UI. But of course, we do have an API for Signals. So if you don't use Kibana or if you use some other tools, you can still use Signals and use the endpoints to create watches, delete watches, execute watches, test watches, and so on. So yes, there's a full REST API for the Signals app.
Okay. And then switching away from Signals back to role-based access control. The question is, in Kibana role-based access control, if a customer has a plugin that they've developed, can they customize access to that plugin for role-based access control?
Yes,
so I think
that's a very good question.
Go ahead.
So yes, we do support that. So if you're a Kibana plugin developer, then you know that each and every Kibana app has an ID. So our permissions for accessing apps in Kibana are based on those IDs, and they're not fixed. So let's say if you have developed an app and it's called XYZ, for example, you could use the Kibana role-based access control to give or deny access to this XYZ application by adding the respective permissions to your SearchGuard roles. So yes, it will also work for third-party plugins.
Okay, and I think we'll post a link to some element of the documentation that explains that after the webinar. And then one more question, which is, I think this is about Signals as well. will there be support to send an HTTP request or native integration so we can generate alerts using SCCM or SCOM?
Yes, this will also already be part of the technical preview. So you can use any HTTP endpoint, also of course with authentication, like, I don't know, basic authentication or whatever, and send your alerts to this system. And by using the transformation and the mustache language that I just showed you, you also have full control over the produced alert. So if you require, or if the system requires a specific JSON format, for example, you will be able to implement that. Okay,
great. Well, that seems to be the end of the questions. I did see someone typing one, but it's not arrived yet. I think we've reached the end of our session. So just to recap, what you've seen is SearchGuard 6 with the demo by Mark. You saw the new features in SearchGuard 7 with signals, as Jochen mentioned. There'll be a technical preview in the coming weeks. So I encourage all of you to take a look at that and let us have the feedback that you can send us. We'll follow up with you directly after this webinar just to check that you've got everything you need. It just remains for me to say thank you for taking the time to listen to our information today, and we wish you a pleasant, enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you.